Hello everyone, it's Amy and welcome back for another journaling on a budget video. And today I am going to be making some postcard stamps so that you can stamp the back of a postcard and what you're going to make is a postcard. So all I do is I start out with a rectangle. This one is 4.5 by 6.5. I like the looks of this size, so I made it that way. I've also made some that are, I made one that was 3 by 5, and I made one that was 4 by 6, and I've made one that was 5.5 by 8.5, and I'll show you those in a little bit. But I want to show you how to make them. So first thing is cut yourself a rectangle. It really doesn't matter the size. Something that you think you are going to be making tags or tucks or something in that size, and just make one for yourself that size. So again, this is 6.5 by 4.5, and what I've done, I've already done 3 sides, is I come in 1/4 of an inch on each side. Now on my very largest one, I came in 1/2 inch, but this is going to be the actual outside lines on our postcard, not the edges of our postcard, but just the lines that are going to actually stamp onto the back of our postcard. Whenever I measure something, I always make 3 marks, because then when you line them up, if you've done one wrong, then you're going to know it, because one of them won't line up. If you do 2 and you do one up here and you do one maybe 1/8 of an inch too long and you line them up, it's going to be crooked, but it may not be super noticeable till after you've made your line or you've made your mark. So if you do 3 lines and they don't line up, you know one of them's wrong, and you can go back and recheck your measurements. So I just went all the way around at 1/4 of an inch in all the way around. And then what we're going to do is, I like my postcard. Okay, now, you always have on the postcard, you have your address over here and your stamp, and then you have your writing area over here. I like my my address part to be a little bit smaller than my writing part. So you just have a little bit more room to write. Now, the one thing you have to remember is, when you're looking at the back of a postcard, the address and the stamp are here, the writing is here. This is a stamp. Remember, it's backwards. When you flip this over and stamp, you want your address on your paper to be on this side, which means that you need your address and your stamp to be on this side. Believe me, I know it. I've done 2 wrong already. I did them both at the same time, and until I actually stamped them, didn't realize they were wrong. Now, you can just come in. I will measure. I'm not going to measure any specific amount, but I just want to be wider over here. So this is 6.5 inches wide. Maybe I think I'm going to do about 2 3/4. And I'm just going to put some marks here at 2 3/4. And you can make this any size you want. If you want, you can do it exactly in half. I know some of the postcards that I have, real postcards, are actually split right down the middle. So it's totally up to you. Now this line I'm going to draw, but I'm going to go a little bit short of my line at the top and my line at the bottom, because we are going to put where these lines are. This is what's going to make our stamp. And so I don't want my line to go all the way from top to bottom. You might want your line to touch. So if you do, then just draw it all the way. Okay, so now I have my address side and I have my writing side. Now we're going to want to stamp. And so the stamp goes up in the outside corner. And I'm just going to I'm going to come down maybe, not quite 1/4 of an inch. And I'm going to come in about let's actually come down about 1/4 of an inch, and then come in 1/4 of an inch, and I'm going to draw a line that's 1 inch long. So that's going to make my stamp 1 inch by 1 inch. I think that'll look okay. And I am just eyeballing it. Hopefully it will be fairly square, but you can do exact measurements if you'd like to. And I'm just going to draw a 1 inch square right here. I need to bring this line out just a little bit. I was a little bit crooked. Okay, so that's where I'm going to put my stamp. So now when I stamp it like this, my stamp's going to be in my upper corner. Now I'm going to put 3 lines for the address and 1 line for the zip code. And again, I'm just going to kind of eyeball these a little bit, come down a little bit from the stamp, and I'm going to just be a little short from the edge and a little short from the middle. Does not have to be any exact amount. I'm going to come down about a 1/2 inch. If you want a measurement, about a 1/2 inch is a good measurement. Again, I'm going to do 3 lines, all about the same length. Like this. Okay, and then we need our zip code. Now remember, when you're writing an address, name, address, city, zip code. But remember, this is getting flipped over. So the zip code is actually on this side. If you were to write name and address and zip code, the zip code is on the right-hand side of the address, which is going to be over here when you flip it over. And the only reason I'm really stressing that is because, like I said, I already messed up too. So I just started the same length as here, but this one I don't make quite as long. And so there we go. This is how I have it drawn out. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to, first off, this is 6.5 by 4.5, and I do write this on my writing part of my postcard so that I know what size to cut my piece of paper, because I want my piece of paper to be exactly the size of the outside dimensions. But then what I do is we are going to glue string in order to make our to make our stamp. We're going to glue string on all of our lines except for these two where these two come out on the edges. But I am going to cut this little corner off right here from line to line. I'm just going to cut that corner off like that on all 4 corners. What that does is then when I cut my piece of paper 6.5 by 4.5 and I set this on top, I can see my paper just sticking out on these corners, on all 4 corners, so that as I'm laying it down on there, I can see that paper stick out right there. And so then I know I've got it in the right spot before I press it down. Now what we're going to do, we are going to do this just like we did our line stamps on all of these lines. And like I said, we're not going to go past this corner. We are going to actually do a rectangle, I guess I should say, all the way around here with our string. And this is a string from the dollar store. It's got a fairly good amount of bulk to it. You don't want it to be too skinny because then you're going to get a little too close to your cardboard. So you want it to hold it up a little bit. If you have something even thicker, you could use that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold it on my corner. Let me show you here. I'm going to hold it right here where I'm going to start, right at that corner, going that way. I'm going to hold it right there. And then I'm going to come down here, make sure that I'm lined up on that end, and I'm going to say I need to cut it right here. And I do my top and my bottom, and then I do my side and my side. And on the sides, I just let it be a little bit on the outside. Or you could do it exactly on the inside too. You can do it however you want to. And then you're just going to put a bead of glue all the way down your line. Now it is good to have a wet paper towel to wipe your hands on when you're putting the string on, because they're going to get sticky as you're adjusting, and you don't want the string to stick to your hands and get pulled up off of the cardboard. I'm just going to go all the way to the end right there, to the end of my line. I missed here completely, so I'm going to put a little bit right there. And then I'm going to take this string, start right at my corner, make sure that I line that up, and then just pull it straight and set it down on the other end. Make sure that that lines up, and then just press it down. Okay, and then I'm going to give it a rub to kind of rub it down in there. And then what I want to do, I can use my fingernails. You can use like a needle or a stir stick or something, and I just kind of run my finger along the edge to get that glue off of there. And this is where you're going to want a wet paper towel. Works a lot better than your hand. But I don't want that glue to get dry in a big lump on the outside edges of my string, because I want that string to make a nice straight line when I stamp. It's not going to be exactly straight. This is a very mixed media project. It's not going to come out with this like perfect lines. And I really don't care for perfect lines. on most stamping that I do at all anyways. So I'm just going to do like that. When I'm completely done with this, then I stick it in a book between parchment paper. I let it dry for just a few minutes after I put my last piece on, and then I put it in a book with parchment paper and I let it sit till it dries and really, really holds to the cardboard, and then I take it out and then I let it dry completely, because inside the book, inside the parchment paper, it would take a really long time to completely dry. So I'm gonna, I don't know what I did. There's my lid. I'm gonna switch glues because I forgot to put that one upside down. And then again, just run a bead. Now, if you get a little bit off your line as you're doing this, that's okay, because just stick your string in the glue, even if it's off the line, and then push your string back to the line where it needs to be. Because sometimes I have a hard time, keeping it right on the line because I really can't see where I'm going because my glue bottle's in the way. And there we go. And then we're going to take this piece. Whoops. Put that right on there. Okay, and I'm a little bit too long here, and because this is actually our stamp, that is going to kind of make a difference. I don't want it sticking out. I want my nice rectangle to be all together. So there we go. Cut that little bit off, and now it's perfect length. Just going to push it down, then kind of rub it down. And then at your ends, if your string gets a little bit puffy, flared out at the end, just push it back together so it's like the same width as the rest of it. And then again, just make sure that you get that glue off of there. Like that. I'm going to push this one up where it belongs because it's not quite in the right spot, and push it down. I'm going to bring a little glue back over there to it, and take all this extra glue off. And there we go. Now I am going to do this. I'm going to do the edge to show you how I line this up. On this one, what I'm going to do is I have to decide, do I want to go inside my string like this or outside my string like this? So on this one, I think I'm going to go on the inside of the string with only the 1/4 inch extra. Going on the outside really will bring it to me a little too close to the edge. So I need to hold it there, and then I need to figure out where the inside edge of this string is. So I think right here is where I'm going to cut it. And if you cut a piece too short, save it for something else and cut another piece. Because, like I said, it's a stamp. You want it to turn out right so that it will last you forever. So I'm going to put that one there. And that looks like that's going to be about good. This one's got to come over just a little bit. Straighten that up. Okay. Oh, and then I just pushed on that one. So we'll just push it back. As you're going, just kind of keep checking how everything is looking. Make sure that it's where you want it to be. It hasn't moved. You haven't like nudged it or pushed it or anything. Once it starts to dry, it will be harder to adjust, so keep your eye on it as you're going. I missed some right there, so I want glue along the whole span. And then I'm going to bring this right in and line it up on the inside of that piece of string. And do the same thing at this other end. I have to set it down to do it though. I can't do it one-handed. And again, if it winds up just a little bit long, then just snip a piece off. This looks like it turned out good. And then I'm just going to hold it here as I push it down as I go so that it doesn't move. And I think my corners look pretty good, so I'm going to go in and get that glue out of there. And on this side, now I can see right here, this one needs to go out just a little bit. It's a little too far in. I'm going to push it out a bit. Line those corners back up. And then make sure I don't have a bunch of extra glue on here. This takes a little bit of time, but again, you know, you're making yourself a tool. You're making a stamp that could cost you anywhere from $10 to $20 if you go buy it at the craft store. So it's definitely worth taking the time. And then you get the satisfaction of knowing that you made it. And if somebody looks at it and goes, hey, that's a really cool stamp, where did you get that? I want one. You can say, oh, well, it's a one of a kind because I made it. And even if you make a second one, it's not going to be exactly the same. Now, I wanted to show you here. There's quite a bit of glue, and I don't know if you can see it, but right here in this corner. I definitely want that out of there. I'm going to just grab a pin because that glue will take to the ink and leave basically a lump in my corner instead of a corner. So I'm going to make sure that I get that out of there, and I can't really get my finger in that little tiny corner, so I'm going to use a pin. And I'm also going to use my pin to just kind of like square up that corner a little bit. Oops. Move that, move it back in. And there we go. Now I'm going to do the same thing on the other end. Right across here. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to put a piece of string here, 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 here. And then the same way that I did this, I'm going to do my square. 4 pieces. I wouldn't try and use one piece and bend it because you'll have rounded corners, but if you want rounded corners on your stamp, then go ahead and just use one piece and then just bend it around the corners and make them rounded. Also, if you don't want a stamp on there, you don't have to have a stamp on there. Or you could use a piece of fun foam that's as thick as your string and put it on there and make it a stamp. So there's lots of different things you can do with your stamp. But I'm going to go and I'm going to finish gluing all of this so that you don't have to watch the whole thing of the gluing, and I will be back shortly to show you how everything works. Okay, I'm back really quickly to show you what this looks like before I put it in my parchment and put it in a book. Now, the reason that I put it in a heavy book, and I don't weight it down super heavy, I put it in the bottom page of my atlas. So I've got like my atlas is about this thick, so all of it sits on top and this is on the very bottom page. But you don't want to squash it because you don't want to make these super flat. But by putting it in a book like that, it will kind of make all of these kind of level. It will help with leveling them a little bit because your string is not exactly the same. This string, it's a woven string, so it's not exactly the same height. So that just helps a little bit. And then a couple things I did want to say is when I cut my 3 address lines, I cut one and then I cut the other 2 just exactly the same size. I don't really care about the lines that I drew. That was just more like where to put them. But I want them all to be the same length. So my lines weren't exactly the same length. I don't care about that. But I do want these lines, these 3 strings, to be the same length. And then also, when you do the stamp, do it the way that you did this. So I did the top and the bottom, which are each 1 inch long, but the 2 side pieces then are a little bit less than an inch because they are inside the top and the bottom string, so they're just a little bit under 1 inch. So I just held it in there and then cut it off at the inside of this one so that actually the square would be, you know, so the whole thing would be square like that. So those were a couple of tips that I just wanted to give you. I'm going to stick this in a book, and when I come back, I'll show you how it works and we'll make a postcard. Okay, I'm back to show you what our finished postcards are going to look like. We're going to do that real quick. So I don't know if I showed you the other ones that I made. This is a 3x5, And then what I did do is I made, when I stamped this on my paint, when I used an ink pad and I rubbed the ink pad over the top, it worked just fine. But when I stamped it on my paint pad, I got some paint on here, which then kind of came through onto my postcard. So what I did was I just cut out a little piece of cardstock, put a little bit of double-sided tape on the back, and then I just did this till it was barely hardly sticky anymore. And put a little handle on it, which is just a piece of masking tape, just fold it up like a little, you just fold it in the middle and then fold the wings out to the edge. And I just can put that on there after I get it all inked up. Then I can put this little card on here. And because this is not exactly square, my bottom's a little wider than my top. Well, the piece I cut and it fits best at the bottom, I did put a little arrow on there to show me that that was the top. So then I did it on all of them, but the other ones were all fine. But that way, after I get my paint on here, I can put this on here before I stamp it onto my postcard. And that way, I won't get any paint on my postcard in this area. So, but this is a 3x5 that I made. This one is 5.5 by 8.5. So this will fit a full half sheet of computer paper folded in half. And the one that we did yesterday was 4.5 by 6.5. And so this is that one. I just finished it up. And then I did finish, I had a 4x6 all ready to go, and I finished putting that one together also because I wound up with some postcards that were that size, so I wanted to make sure I had that size ready to go. Then what I did was I just looked through some magazines. I looked through, my daughter has an Arab magazine that comes, and so I cut out a couple of pictures on there. This one is that one is 4.5 by 6.5. Yes. So I just cut out a picture that size, and then I glued it to a piece of cardstock with a, what do you call it? A glue stick. And then just stuck that in my book and let it sit overnight. So I have this postcard that we're going to stamp, and then I had a couple of 4x6s, and so I cut out that one. And then this one was just a advertisement for, I think it was for some kind of a floor cleaner. And I love, every time I see this picture, I love this purple on here. And so, and I like that it said be floored. So I kept that part and just left off the bottom part. Now here, I cut my picture a little bit too small so you can see a little bit of the white of the cardstock from the back, but I did want my cardstock to be 4x6, so I left that there. I'm going to ink the edges anyways, so by the time I ink it, it's not going to make any difference. And then another little piece of that, I did a 3x5, and is that 3x5? Yes, it is. I did a 3x5. Just because I love that purple color, and I thought I could put a little sentiment or something on the postcard right there. So we're just going to stamp them up real quick. I did go ahead and I put some brown paint on my handmade paint pad, and I do show you how to do this in the line stamp video if you want to know how to make this pad. But and then when you're done with this, I just go ahead and I just put scrap paper on there just to get as much paint off as I can, and then I wash it in a bowl with some good hot soapy water, and then I throw that water outside, or I put it in some kitty litter till it clumps and then throw it away. You do not want to wash this in your sink and wash this acrylic paint down your sink, so you want to be careful about that. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to set that paint pad to the side because you know how an ink pad works. We'll start with our 4x6, so I'm going to flip this one over, and I put my dark book here so that you can see the card, because I thought if I set that on white, you're not going to be able to see it. And I want to make sure that I've got my upside up. So we're going to do like that. Now I'm just going to take this, and I also put handles on the back of these, which again, you just take a piece of masking tape and fold it in half, holding out the ends, so you kind of have wings, pinch it together, and then put those wings on your thing. Now also I noticed when I was stamping here, when I stamped these along the edge of my cardboard was making a mark. So what I did, and let me see, which one did I not finish yet, because there's one of them I didn't finish. this one. What I did was I just went ahead and I just kind of rolled back this edge. I just put my fingernail underneath, and then I just used my thumb, and I just kind of rolled that back a little bit so that that stark edge, which is level with the edge of the cardboard, does not touch my paint pad, hopefully. And that's going to be the very edge of your postcard anyway, so it wouldn't be too bad. And then I don't know if you can kind of see how that's just rolled back a little bit. You don't want to do it too much, because if you make a big fold in it right here, then that fold is going to copy onto your paper. So just kind of roll those edges back, and that might help. We'll find out, because I haven't tried it yet. So I have already rolled back the edges on this one. I'm going to get some paint on it. I know that my postcard is right side up, and so then I want to look where this is so that I know where that's at. And I'm going to just go over here and just kind of pounce it on my paint pad. Sorry about the shaking if you're shaking. Just want to make sure that I get paint all over my lines. And I think that this looks pretty good. And then I'm going to take my little thing here and stick it in the middle. And then, because we cut off the corners, we should be able to line this up, because we cut these corners off. Line it up so that you can see the corners of your cardstock, and then just set it down. Now, you know that you go all the way around the edges, so I kind of press along the edges. And then I'm going to press on this side where my stamp is, and my address lines, and my zip code, and my center line. Just kind of make sure it gets good contact. Give it time to soak into your cardstock. And then we'll see how this is going to look. Now it's going to be very mixed media. It's not going to be this solid line. And I'm going to hold down this corner and take this off. And there we go. We have our postcard stamp, or the back of our postcard. So this is the front, and this is our back. And I just think that looks really cool. Now, I didn't get a lot of paint over here. Oh, and you know why I didn't? Because when I put this on here, I wasn't paying attention, and this card right here went over that corner. So you do have to make sure, and you could actually make this, I probably will maybe trim this down just a little bit. It doesn't have to be right to the edges. I pretty much just want to cover this center part to not get all of that brown on here, because now look, you've got a great writing space. So let's go ahead and do a couple more. Let's do this one. I'm just going to set this one aside, and then I'm going to edge those. I might even round the corners. I'm not exactly sure. This is my top, so I want to make sure that my top is at my top. I'm going to take off my little thing there and see which way I've got this to make sure that my top is going to be up here. And I'm just going to come over here and pounce it on my paint pad. And even though they don't come out with this perfect solid line, that's what I like about them the best. That's what I like about my line stamps. And that's actually what made me think about this. I was thinking I wanted to put some postcards in my journals, and some homemade ones. And so I was thinking about buying a homemade stamp, and I thought that's so expensive. And then I got to thinking about the way that I did my line stamps. I want to make sure I don't do the same thing I did with the last one. And I thought that that would work for this, so I tried it, and it did. I'm just going to kind of line this up, and then again press around the edges. Press where our postage stamp and our address is supposed to be. I didn't necessarily double check that before I set it down, so I'm not 100% positive if it's here or not, or if I flipped it around, but we'll find out. And just give the paint time to soak in. Whether you're using paint or ink, it doesn't matter. Whenever you're stamping, give your stamp time to soak in. Give that ink or paint time to soak into your paper. That's, to me, I think that's part of my problem. I just like stamp it down and take it off, and it's like, well, that wasn't a very good stamp. And it's because that ink or paint didn't have time to soak into my paper. It's not pressing, it's just soaking that gives you a better image. And there we go. Oh, I think that one turned out really, really good. So you've got the spot for your stamp, you got your spot for writing. That one turned out really nice all the way around the edges, and I love how that just looks. I've got a little flip of paint right here, a little like glob of paint. And so I'm not going to touch that till it dries. When it dries, I'll be able to take that off of there. If I try and do it now, I think I'm going to smear it. So, but that dark spot will be coming off of there. So let's do our little tiny one too. Let's see, where's that one? And that one is right here. I think I want this to be my top right up here. Yes. So we'll just grab my little stamp, take our little guide off there. And on this one, I just took a piece of fun foam, just cut a little square and put that on there for the stamp. Just going to pounce it over here on my paint pad. I think that looks pretty good. Don't really know for sure because I've already used it. So, and I didn't get completely covered on there, and that's okay with me. I kind of like how that stamp doesn't come out as a solid square. That was actually my biggest worry about using the square of foam, was that it was going to be this solid dark square. Just going to kind of press it lightly, give it a chance to soak in. We'll call that good. Hold down my corner. And see, these handles make it so nice to be able to pull it off. So don't forget to put your handles on there. And there we go. I think that one turned out really good too. So I am really liking how these turned out. And I hope that if you make some, you have fun. Remember that, you know, it takes time to make tools. So don't think it's going to happen in a real big hurry. I know that actually when I was... we did our 4.5 by 6.5 together, this one, and I really was not really feeling like doing the 4 by 6, but then when I went and looked for pictures, I wound up with some 4 by 6s, so I had to finish it. But I made myself finish. I'm glad that I did, because I probably wouldn't pull out all the stuff to do it again. I would get sidetracked and it would never get done. So, you know, so go ahead and remember to try and get done any size that you want to get done before you put all of your stuff away, because you want it to have it in the future. So, but that's what we came up with. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that you make some and have fun with them yourself. And I hope that you all have an outstanding day. Bye-bye.